Some of you may have seen our April and May blog post interviews where I'm in conversation with Julia Woodman about the A-Team trial, which was a large randomised controlled trial for people with back pain. And in this second series of conversations with Julia Woodman, she's going to tell us about the second large randomised controlled trial of the effect of Alexander lessons on people with persistent musculoskeletal pain. And this is the Atlas trial, which evaluated the effectiveness of Alexander lessons on people with chronic neck pain. And in this first post, Julia, who was a member of the Atlas study team, is going to take us behind the scenes and tell us a little bit about how the trial came about and what it was actually like to be involved in a large-scale clinical trial. So, hi Julia,
Hello.
welcome. And perhaps you could say a little bit about how the Atlas trial came about.
Yes, so Hugh Macpherson, who very sadly died last year, he was an academic, a researcher, also a practicing acupuncturist, had done many trials of acupuncture, and he was keen to look at whether there was any long-term benefit of acupuncture for people with chronic neck pain. So he knew that because it's incredibly difficult getting research funding, that he was probably had a better chance of getting funding if he could bring in a second intervention, perhaps something a little bit novel. And he'd heard about the A-Team trial. And I think he had some idea, having seen an Alexander teacher working once, and they were always touching this person's neck. I think he thought it was something to do with the neck. Anyway, he approached Stat and Kathleen Ballard of Kathleen was one of the team members for the A-Team trial. And she decided to bring me on board, not just because of my experience with clinical trials, but also because she knew what an absolutely mammoth task it was going to be. So she wanted to kind of share the burden.
Fair enough.
So we kind of jumped at the opportunity. It seemed an appropriate study to do. Not least, chronic neck or neck pain is the joint second most common reason for people beginning Alexander lessons. So that seemed appropriate. And so that began, it was the beginning really of a long collaboration, a very productive collaboration with Hugh, occasionally challenging, but always friendly and respectful.
Okay, and can you give us an idea of the scope and scale of the trial?
So Atlas, and the acronym stands for Alexander Technique Lessons or Acupuncture Sessions. So Atlas was a large randomized controlled trial. It was funded by Arthritis Research UK and funded to the tune of £750,000. And it was based at the University of York. And there was a large research team there of about 15 people managing the trial. And Hugh Macpherson was the principal investigator. And then there was Kathleen and myself. And then there was a whole range of other people, the trial managers who really did the lion's share of the day-to-day management of the trial during the active phase of the study. But also, statisticians, safety experts, health economic people, data managers. So yeah, a big team involved. And then of course you've got the GP practices involved. You've got the practitioners, the acupuncturists and the Alexander teachers, and of course all of the participants. So quite a big undertaking. I think there were 10,000 letters sent out to potential participants from GP practices. And of those, there were, I think, more than 1,000 people expressed interest, and they had to be screened against the trial eligibility criteria. And so we ended up with about 500 people in the study. So yeah, quite a big undertaking, really.
Yeah, huge. A lot of people, both participants and team members as well, yeah. And how long was the whole thing from start to finish? I mean, obviously, there's going to be a period, very intense work where you're data gathering and everything, but the whole thing, how long did it last?
So approximately around about 10 years, getting on for 10 years,
Wow.
from start to finish. Um, and, and really takes over your life during that time.
Mm,
And in this slide, it just gives you a bit of an overview of the timelines. And you can see that, because of the different phases, really, you've got the application for the funding, then you've got to actually design the trial itself, but also creating all the trial materials, participant information, consent forms, all of that side of things. There's the setup of the trial itself, recruiting the practitioners, recruiting the GP practices. Then you've got the recruitment and screening of the GP's patients. And then you've got the actual active phase, intervention phase. And of course, everyone's starting their lessons or their acupuncture sessions at different times. And then throughout, you're getting data being collected, but that's not actually looked at as the trial went along, apart from safety data. Obviously, it's important to monitor there's no kind of problems there. So it was only after data lock at the end of the active phase that then analysis of the data and interpretation could begin. And then, of course, you've got the great long process of writing up the findings and publishing the findings, and then all that kind of back and forth with the journals.
mm,
So yes, I think, went on from about 2009, 2010 to 2018.
mm, yeah. Very, really lengthy process, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what were your main aims when designing
Okay,
it?
so the main aim of the trial really was to see whether there would be additional benefit to usual GP care from attending either Alexander lessons or acupuncture sessions for people who've got persistent or chronic neck pain. And we really wanted it to be as representative as possible of how Alexander lessons are, are delivered in the UK. So, there was certainly no kind of cherry picking of, we think they're the best teachers or whatever. It was really representative in the trial sites, which are actually across 4 cities in the north of England, York, Sheffield, Manchester, and Leeds. And unfortunately, just because of the logistics, it ended up that actually most of the recruitment happened in just 2 of those. So we weren't able to kind of, sort of have the whole range of teachers, all equally involved. So some sort of saw more people than others. But still, nonetheless, it was giving, quite a good range. I think there were 18 teachers in total who were involved. And I think what we were interested in wasn't just, whether or not Alexander lessons would lead to benefit, but also to really to try and get some idea of if it did, like, well, how might that benefit be coming about?
Okay. And can you tell us what the main objective of the study was, and say a little bit about the trial design?
The primary objective was to compare the effectiveness of Alexander lessons plus usual GP care with usual GP care alone, and acupuncture sessions plus usual GP care with GP care alone. And if we look at this slide here, it's showing the trial design. So you can see that GP patients, they were had been diagnosed with significant chronic neck pain. And if they met the trial eligibility criteria, then they were, and that was a total of 517 of them, then they were randomly allocated to one of these 3 intervention groups. So here, that obviously the control group is the usual care group. And as I mentioned, throughout all the trial, everybody continued to receive their usual care from their GP, and this consisted really of any NHS treatment or medication that was required. And then evaluations of outcomes occurred at several time points, 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months. And it was a 12-month time point, which was predefined as the primary or the main assessment point for the study, because we're interested in long-term outcomes is there a long-term benefit of these interventions?
Okay. So was there actually any direct comparison of the effectiveness of Alexander lessons versus the effectiveness of acupuncture, for example?
The trial wasn't a head-to-head comparison of Alexander lessons and acupuncture. So you can't use the data to say that either one was more or less effective than the other. So what it was a comparison, as I said, of Alexander lessons with usual GP care and of acupuncture with usual care. And had you wanted to look at a comparison, a direct comparison of Alexander lessons and acupuncture in terms of their efficacy, then you would have required several hundred more participants than the more than 500 that we actually had. So it would have been a much bigger, even bigger trial.
Okay, and what were the interventions studied?
There were 12 acupuncture sessions, each of 50 minutes, and they were delivered by acupuncturists accredited with the British Acupuncture Council. And they consisted of, or they were based in traditional Chinese medicine, but they were also giving out lifestyle advice where appropriate. And so that 12 sessions of 50 minutes equates to an overall total intervention time of, I think, 600 minutes. So when we were deciding what to select in terms of Alexander lessons, we wanted it to be comparable. So there was going to be 600 minutes overall to play with, if you like. So we could have had, 10 lessons of an hour long. But what we actually decided to do was to have 20 lessons of 30 minutes of active teaching time. So, a little bit less than in the 18 trial, but, still, a substantial number. And these were delivered by stat registered teachers, so they're one-to-one lessons. And very keen, as I said before, for this to be representative of teaching within the UK. And so the teachers committed to use a combination of hands-on and spoken guidance.
Okay. And what about impact on neck pain? How was that assessed?
So the main outcome measure was the Northwick Park Neck Pain Questionnaire, or NPQ. And this was it's a recognised measure for neck pain, and it's looking at not just the pain itself, but the actual impact on the person's life, so the associated disability. And it consists of a series of statements for the participants to select what was most appropriate to them. So to give you an example, it might be, I can carry heavy objects, or I can't carry heavy, or I can carry heavy objects, but they cause me pain, say, or I can't carry heavy objects, but I can carry lighter objects, or I can't carry anything at all.
Yeah.
So what each of those many responses to each of the different statements is then translated into a score, which is then translated into a percentage. Then it makes it into a quantitative measure. And as I said, that the main outcome point was the 12 months. And in addition to that, there were a range of other measures which we'll talk about later.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so that's a really nice introduction, Julia. Thank you. And next time I'm sure we're all really looking forward to finding out about the findings of the study. So thanks again.
Thank you.